The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The tax collectors and the sinners were seeking the company of Jesus to hear what he had to say. And the Pharisees and the scribes complained. This man, they said, welcomes sinners and eats with them. So he spoke this parable to them. What man among you with 100 sheep, losing one, would not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the missing one till he found it? And when he found it, would he not joyfully take it on his shoulders? And when he got home, call his friends together and neighbours. Rejoice with me, he would say, I've found my sheep that was lost. In the same way, I tell you, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one repentant sinner than over 99 virtuous men who have no need of repentance. Or again, what woman with 10 drachma would not, if she lost one, light a lamp and sweep out the house and search thoroughly till she found it? And when she had found it, call together her friends and neighbours and say, Rejoice with me, she would say, I have found the drachma I lost. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing among the angels of God over one repentant sinner. He also said, a man had 2 sons. The younger said to his father, Father, let me have the share of the estate that would come to me. So the father divided the property between them. A few days later, the younger son got together everything he had and left for a distant country where he squandered his money on a life of debauchery. When he'd spent it all, that country experienced a severe famine, and now he began to feel the pinch. So he hired himself out to one of the local inhabitants who put him on his farm to feed the pigs. And he would willingly have filled his belly with husks the pigs were eating, but no one offered him anything. Then he came to his senses and said, How many of my father's paid servants have more food than they want? And here I am, dying of hunger. I will leave this place and go to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as one of your paid servants. So he left the place and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with pity. And he ran to the boy and clasped him in his arms and kissed him tenderly. Then his son said, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, he said, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and bring the calf we've been fattening and kill it. We're going to have a feast, a celebration, because this son of mine was dead and has come back to life. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now, the elder son was in the fields on his way back. As he drew near the house, he could hear music and dancing. And calling one of the servants, he asked what it was all about. He said, Your brother has come home, and your father has killed the calf we'd fattened because he'd got him back safe and sound. He was angry then and refused to go in. And his father came out to plead with him, but he answered his father, Look, all these years I've slaved for you and never once disobeyed your orders, yet you never offered me so much as a kid for me to celebrate with my friends. But for this son of yours, when he comes back after swallowing up your property, he and his women, you killed the calf we had been fattening. The father said, My son, you are with me always, and all I have is yours. But it was only right that we should celebrate and rejoice, because your brother here was dead and has come to life. He was lost and is found. The Gospel of the Lord. I couldn't in conscience read the short form of the Gospel. It's such a great touching sense to give us an image of God. To give us an image of God. How many of you have got an image of God as a loving Father you can go back to any time, no matter what? This is the story of the lost coin and the lost sheep and the lost son. This is the lost and found part of the Bible. All right? A phrase that worried me for so long, there's more joy in heaven over one sinner that repents than over the 99 virtuous. I always thought that was very unfair. And if it was that what was said, it would be unfair. But I cut the sentence full. There's more joy in heaven over one who repents than over the 99 virtuous who have no need of repentance. There's no joy in heaven over virtuous people who have no need of repentance. Got it? I better do it again. There's no joy in heaven. There's no joy. You give no joy to God if you are virtuous and have no need of repentance. Jesus means what he says there. Sometimes we think it's unfair that we're so good and we're at home all the time, never once disobeying him and being faithful to him all the time. And whilst those others are going around debauching themselves and others, we've got the rough end of the deal. I told you before, the only one that gets the rough end of this deal is the fatted calf. Both of them would have deserved a belting. Now, the context of the gospel. You get a little note from me during the week, I believe now. We only started, I write a blog for the parish magazine at home. So it comes down and it'll summarise what I'm going to say in the sermon. So you either will hear beforehand what I'm going to say, or afterwards you can look it up and check it over, all right? But this chapter in Luke's Gospel is a chapter 15, isn't it? Is in the context of the question that they asked Jesus. Why does he eat with sinners and welcome them? And the three parables address that question. Now, we could talk for hours on the mercy of God and how he welcomes back the boy. We could talk for hours about the older son and how good and bad he was. But to try and put the story in the context that Jesus was trying to teach at the time. Yeah, it's wonderful to have homilies on the scriptures and to have meditations on the scriptures and to just let the scripture talk to you. But what we're trying to do this morning is to get the mentality of Luke's as he writes down the way Jesus taught this parable. And it is a parable. It never happened. It never happened. No son is that bad, no son is that good, and no father is that kind. Let's start from there, all right? Only God is like that. It's a story, and it's a teaching story of Jesus. I must just look at the clock for a minute because this is so good today to get this. See, we told you recently that in the parables, the heaven is described as a banquet. It's a great big meal, a wonderful feed, you know. It's either a banquet or it's that great big house in the sky. In my Father's home, there are many rooms, you know. That's how Jesus talks about heaven. So the banquet here is heaven. The Father puts on the banquet. God puts on the banquet for the boy that's home because he's so pleased. There's joy in heaven over one sinner who repents. There's such joy in the Father's heart that the boy has come back, you know. He had his speech ready. I love it. Sometimes you go to confession and you have all your sins ready, you know, and you come out of confession and you found you forgot to say the important part. This boy, I've sinned against heaven and before God, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your servant. Give me a job as one of your hired hands. He gets to the Father and he says, I've sinned before God and before heaven. I'm no longer deserved to be called your servant. And these things are going pretty good, so he left out the last bit about wanting a job as a hired hand. He felt things were going pretty good at that time and he could settle for the welcome home. All right. It's a story of compassion and heart and feeling. But see, the older son is invited to the banquet. Heaven. He's invited to the banquet, but he chooses not to come. Jesus is saying, why do I sin why do I eat with sinners and welcome them? Everybody's invited to where I have a meal, and I told you 7 times in Luke's Gospel Jesus is having a meal. And all the 7 times there's tensions. You know, we've mentioned that along the way. But why Jesus doesn't eat with the respectable people? Jesus was being accused of keeping bad company. My mother would have called it bad company, all right? And you know, we knew what that was when we were growing up, who you didn't associate with and who you did. But Jesus is associating with the tax collectors and the sinners. There's more of this next week, I can tell you, the Pharisee and the publican. If you don't get it this week, you'll get it next week. The good people, the only people Jesus had a problem with are the good people. Who were the good people? The people that went to church, the people that tithed, the people that kept the law, and the people that made sure other people kept the law. The Pharisees, they were the elite. They were the separated ones. They were the community. Like, who are the Pharisees today? We've got to keep asking ourselves that question. Why would the eldest son had such a hatred and unforgiveness for his brother? He could put more into one sentence than you or I could. You'd have to be a practiced hater for years and years and years. Listen to what he could get into one sentence. Yeah, this son of yours, he and his women, spending your money, wasn't the father's money at all. The father gave it to him. He'd get more in a gob full of hate than most people can do in a lifetime. He could, by what he said, his words of resentment and unforgiveness, and he chose not to go to the banquet. He chose not to go to heaven. A woman said to me once, if she's going to heaven, I don't want to go. And I said under my breath, don't worry, love, you already made a decision, you won't be there. Is that true? This guy's saying, if he's going to the banquet, I'm not going. Why does Jesus eat with sinners and welcome them? Because the other people don't want to pay the price of admission. And the price of admission is to love one another and to forgive one another. And, we get into heaven by the mercy of God. Paul said in the second reading, right? It's because Jesus Christ meant to make me the greatest evidence of his inexhaustible patience, for other people will come later to trust in him and come to eternal life. We are the evidence of God's inexhaustible patience. We didn't do anything to earn heaven. We wouldn't get there except that Jesus died on the cross and opened the gates of heaven for us. We're all welcome to the banquet. Jesus, he says, I long to have this Pasch with you. Remember that phrase in John's Gospel, that he longs to have us at the banquet. Jesus longs to be with us at the banquet. But there are conditions, and there are conditions. And, you can go up in front of the pearly gates and say to him, I never once disobeyed you. All the time of my life, I gave my thing. I did everything. I kept every rule. I did everything good. If you did it without that forgiveness and love that's demanded of a Christian, then, like the woman said, if she's in heaven, I don't want to go. That's an awful thing to say. I think there's an end to that story that is happier than the way I left it. But at the moment, I did hear those words said. And, within me, I did feel that the person had already made a decision. We would have just changed our ways. The parable of the lost and found. There is more joy in heaven over one sinner that repents than over 99, how many are here, who have no need of repentance. All right, there's more than 99 here. Yeah, but that phrase worried me for years. How could Jesus not get joy over 99 virtuous people? But he said, over 99 virtuous people who have no need of repentance. That's the line. There's a great joy in heaven over one person that comes back. That's the story of the lost coin. There's great joy in heaven over one sheep that is found. That's the story of the lost sheep. There's more joy in heaven over one that's found than over 99 good people who do not repent. And the story of the prodigal son is that there's joy in heaven because this boy was lost and he's come back to life. And the father's joy is overwhelming that the boy has come back. The father gives him the sandals, he gives him the robe, he gives him the ring. I told you before, the ring is the credit card. He can make any contract in his father's name. Putting the ring in the wax, on the sign on the contract. The American Express gold card, first day back. That is a story. That is a story. There's no one no human father would be silly enough to do that. But God is totally illogical. The Father is totally illogical when it comes to loving us And we've got every ability to approach him and to come to him. Jesus eats with sinners and he welcomes them because so many of the other people do not welcome him. Amen? Amen. Not bad to do the prodigal son in 10 minutes.